nesting substrate and nest orientation on cavity nesting solitary bees in southern Punjab, Pakistan. So Mudssar, take it away, please.
Can you see the slide, madam?
I can see the slide, just put it into the full screen mode.
Okay, I am sharing it.
Yeah, can you put it in
Is this
presenter
right
mode?
now? Is this right now?
Yeah, I can see the title slide. I just need it in the, there we go, now it's there. Maybe my computer is slow, you're good to go.
Is this right now?
Yeah, it's good to go.
Okay. I am Dr. Mudssar Ali, working as Assistant Professor Entomology at MNS University of Agriculture, Multan. The topic I am currently presenting in this conference is seasonal impact of landscape complexity, nesting substrate, and nest orientation on cavity nesting solitary bees in southern Punjab, Pakistan. First, the importance of pollination. As you all know, pollination is a very important ecosystem service that is contributing nearly 75% of food crops that are dependent on this pollination, and 35% of global food volume that is also entirely dependent on pollination. Pollination is contributing almost $235 to $577 billion in the world economy, and for the survival and reproduction of cross-pollinated plants, insects, especially bees. Bees are very important for their survival and reproduction. So among all the pollinators, bees have been documented as the most important or principal pollinators across the world due to their different attributes, due to their different good pollination abilities, including their higher visitation rate, their higher pollen depositing abilities, and their good single visit pollen deposition as such. So these bees not only influence the fruit size and quality, but these also improve the seed set and yield of different crops. And around the world, 20,000 bee species these have been reported. And among these bee species, 90% of these are solitary bees. And these solitary bees, these are more specific. And these are more important pollinators, and several studies have proved across the world that these are more efficient pollinators as compared to the honeybees in different crops. And these are also the specialist pollinator in some of the crops. If we take an example of alfalfa or lucerne, in which these solitary bees outclass honeybees based on their tripping ability. So across the world, there are constant reports that bees are declining, and there are several factors that have been reported. These factors are listed here. Among these important factors include climate change. Since in the current year, we have also faced this climate change in Pakistan as the winter month, February 2022 and March, the temperature was suddenly raised, and these have negative impacts in our mango pollination as well. So the pesticide world over, broad spectrum pesticides, these are also affecting the bees, as well as the habitat loss. Some of the diseases that are of either honeybees or that of solitary bees, these are also posing a constant threat to these bees decline. Monoculturing is another issue. Growing a single crop over large acreage, these are also posing threat, as the bees, due to their preference of certain pollen, or these bees prefer certain pollen or certain nectar. So this monoculturing is also affecting bees, and as well as the parasites. These are also causing a decline of bees. So what we should do for the conservation of bees, we should diversify the ecosystem with bee-friendly flowers. We should also use some more specific and bio-friendly pesticide or biopesticide in order to reduce the threats for these bees. Moreover, we should also grow bee-friendly plants. Other than near to crop plants, but we should also follow some bare lands like road edges, road verges or field verges. These should also be considered for growing these bee-friendly plants. And one of the important thing, we should also use artificial nesting sites. Since other than foraging, the nesting sites, these are also important for these bees for their year-round conservation. So the trap nests are the bee hotels. These are human-made tools that have been used across the world. These provide nesting sites for the bees, and these are important for their conservation. These may be of different types, as these may be hollow bamboos or plant stems or reeds, as well as certain other cavities in cardboard, polystyrene, or holes drilled in wooden logs or mud blocks. So these variety of nesting materials, these are needed since the different bees prefer different nesting materials. So what were the objectives of this research? First, to compare the effectiveness of these different artificial cavity nesting materials for solitary bees that are present in our area, and to evaluate the effect of direction, whether if we install or if these traps in a certain direction could affect the choice of the bees for that particular nesting material. And then the comparison to compare the effect of cavity diameter on colonization of these solitary bees. These experiments were carried out at 3 different cities of South Punjab. These include Bahawalpur, Multan, and Khanewal in 5 different landscapes. The details are mentioned in the next coming slides. 4 nests. Each location of these different sites were selected in these districts or cities. The details are mentioned in the next slides. And entrance diameter, finally, this was measured through using digital vernier caliper. So what were the parameters of this study? The landscape. First, we selected different landscape, 5 different landscape. First, the forest landscape, then the desert landscape, then agriculture, followed by peri-urban and urban landscape. Then the direction, 4 directions were selected: east direction, west direction, north and south direction. Then the 5 substrate materials, including bamboo, wooden logs, wooden blocks, mud blocks, and paper tubes, these were used. And finally, the seasonality was also observed. In different months, the occupation of these artificial nesting cavities. So these were the different landscapes that were selected. As you know, as we are seeing in Bahawalpur, the 2 landscape, forest and desert landscape, was selected, while in Multan, 3 landscapes were selected: urban, agriculture, and peri-urban. While in Khanewal, only a single landscape, agriculture, was selected. At each location, further in this landscape, 4 nests or 4 bee hotels were installed. So these are some of the features and the vegetation that were present at that particular place. These are some of the features of that particular habitat we have recorded. And now these pictures are showing the installation of the trap nest. These trap nests, as you are seeing, were installed in forest landscape, in desert landscape, in peri-urban, in agriculture, as well as in urban landscape. So also the digital technology was used to standardize the nesting direction. As you are seeing, these traps first installed, and digital technology was used to standardize the direction of these nests. Different directions were used to install these nests. Then these were the materials. As you are seeing in this picture, mud blocks were used, wooden blocks, wooden logs, paper tubes, and bamboos and bamboo material. These were the 5 nesting substrate materials that were used for these trap nests. So the data was recorded at an interval of 15 days, and it was recorded up to 3 months. And occupied cavities, these were removed and replaced with the new cavities. And then the data was further analysis by using analysis of variance by using software SAS. Then now the results. First, the influence of landscape. It was seen that the peri-urban landscape, there was no significant difference between peri-urban and forest landscape in terms of cavity occupation, while no cavity occupation occurred at urban landscape. Then the influence of direction, if you talk about the direction, it was seen that the south direction resulted in the maximum cavity occupation, followed by the north direction, while the lowest cavity occupation was recorded in east direction. Then the influence of nesting substrate, it was seen that maximum cavity occupation occurred in bamboo and wooden logs, followed by wooden blocks, while there was no cavity occupation in paper tubes. Then the influence of seasonality. This data shows that maximum cavity occupation occurred in April to June, followed by January to March, while no cavity occupation occurred in October to December. And the influence of diameter, which cavities the bees preferred. So the maximum cavity occupation occurred in 6 to 6.9 millimeter, 6 to 7 millimeter. This cavity was the mostly occupied. Most cavities occupied in this range, followed by 8 to 8.9 millimeter, while the minimum cavity occupation occurred in 9 to 9.9 millimeter. So these were the two of the bee species that we recovered from these traps, megakill cephalotes and other the megakill species. Only 214, 5% out of 3,800 cavities, these were occupied. Emergence occurred only from 12 of these cavities. And megakill cephalote, this emerged from only 8 of the cavities, while the another megakill species, this emerged from remaining 4 cavities. So the conclusion, the bees preferred cavities in trap nest that were located in landscape, forest and peri-urban landscape. This was due to the fact that this was dominated by a diverse unmanaged vegetation that was providing the food resource to these bee species. And mostly nesting occurred in trap that was not facing sun directly in south and north as compared to the east direction, because there is a certain favorable internal temperature of cavities that is preferred by the bees for nesting. Then occupation rate was higher in bamboo as compared to the other materials, since there are less chances, as we seen, parasitism are the parasites. So there were less chances of parasitism in bamboo as compared to the other nesting materials. Moreover, the nesting activity was maximum in March, when the temperature was favorable and foraging supplies were abundant. Mostly occupation occurred in cavities diameter of 6 and 8 millimeter. So these are the references that were used in this study. So thanks a lot for your listening. Now, if you have any question, please ask.
Thanks so much for that. There are no questions right now, but I'm sure some people are typing. In the meantime, I have one. I was wondering if you had any idea if the more common species were using the artificial nesting, or if there was rare species, or if you had a chance to even look at that data.
Oh, I think Mudssar lost his connection.
I thought so too. I was hoping maybe he'd get reconnected. We'll see if he joins quickly. He still has a bit of time for questions.